Today, based on Matthew 26.132, I would like us to understand together the sermon titled Jesus' Table and Commission.
Right, and it's a really profound topic for our deep dive today.
It really is. And, if you grew up around the church, or honestly, even if you just know the basic cultural narrative, you were probably taught that Jesus was the ultimate innocent victim. Like the religious system was corrupt, the crowds, turned into a mob, the Romans executed him, and it was all just this terrible, tragic injustice.
Yeah, that's the standard view for sure.
But what if he wasn't a victim of circumstance at all? Like, what if, legally and spiritually speaking, he actively orchestrated his own execution?
It's a complete paradigm shift, the absolute flip of the narrative.
It's wild, right?
Completely. Because when you look at the events leading up to the crucifixion through the specific theological lens presented in today's sermon, the whole idea of Jesus as just this passive victim, it completely dissolves.
Wow.
Yeah, we're looking at a highly coordinated, intentional legal maneuver.
Yeah.
And it all hinges on a really fascinating linguistic connection in Japanese.
Right, these two words that sound completely identical.
Exactly. They're homophones,
Yeah.
but they carry vastly different weights.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The word is Shokutaku. And the first version of Shokutaku, which uses the kanji for eat and table, simply means a dining table.
Right.
It brings to mind, the Last Supper, a place of intimacy, fellowship, sharing a meal. But the second Shokutaku uses entirely different kanji characters, and it translates to a formal commission.
Yes.
Like it means entrusting someone with a highly specific task, and usually it carries this intense official or legal weight.
It does. And the preacher shares a rather profound personal anecdote to illustrate just how heavy that second word really is.
Yeah, this part was fascinating.
It really was. Because long before he ever connected it to theology, he actually encountered the kanji character for this kind of commission, the kanji character, when he was reluctantly appointed as a local welfare volunteer.
Oh, right, a minsein.
Exactly, by the Japanese government.
And he actually mentions he didn't even know how to read the character at first.
No, he had no idea. He was handed this incredibly formal document commissioned directly by the Minister of Health, Labor, and Welfare, and he thought the character was pronounced Izoku.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was only later that he learned it was actually pronounced Shokutaku.
But the gravity of that word didn't fully hit him right then, did it?
No, not at all. It didn't hit him until years later when he heard that exact same term broadcast on the evening news. But in a much darker, much more severe context.
Right.
The phrase used by the news reporters was Shokutaku Satsujin.
Which translates to commissioned murder, or, in Western legal terms, consensual homicide.
Right.
It describes a scenario where someone explicitly, intentionally asks another person to end their life.
Exactly. And the legal distinction between a standard murder and a commissioned death is like the fulcrum of everything we are discussing today.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, in a standard murder, the act is completely driven by malice. The perpetrator acts against the will of the victim, stealing their life. So the culpability is entirely on the killer.
Right. The killer bears all the guilt.
Yes. But in a commissioned death, Shokutaku Satsujin, there is a pre-existing causal relationship. The victim initiates the act.
They ask for it.
Right. They issue an entrusting a formal request. So the legal reality of the person holding the weapon completely changes.
Because they were commissioned to do it.
Exactly. By the very person who dies.
So if we overlay that legal framework onto the crucifixion, the implications are just staggering. I mean, you're effectively saying that the cross wasn't a first-degree murder perpetrated by humanity against God.
Yeah.
It was a consensual homicide.
That is the core argument, as heard in today's sermon. The public ministry of Jesus isn't viewed merely as, a rabbi going on a teaching tour. His entire life was a divine commission.
God the Father commissioned the Son.
Exactly. And the Son, to fulfill the ultimate goal of salvation, had to turn around and commission others to carry out his death. It was a strict, non-negotiable contract.
Okay, let me just test that theory against the actual historical record for a second. Because early on in his ministry, Jesus stands in front of the religious elite and says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up."
He's referencing his own body.
Right. But grammatically, he doesn't say, if you happen to destroy this temple, or when you violently attack this temple. He uses an imperative.
Yes.
Destroy this temple. It's a command.
He is issuing the commission right there. He is telling the authorities, I need you to perform this specific action so that I can fulfill the next phase, which is raising it up. And the necessity of that specific commission explains some of the most baffling moments in the Gospels. Like, there are multiple instances where mobs of people try to kill Jesus prematurely.
Right, like that scene in his hometown of Nazareth. The crowd gets so infuriated by his teaching that they drag him to the edge of a cliff to throw him off.
Exactly.
Or later in Jerusalem, the crowds literally pick up rocks in the street to stone him to death right on the spot. But he never dies in those moments.
Never.
So let me guess the mechanism here. If an angry mob simply pushes him off a cliff, it's just a chaotic tragedy, right? The divine contract is void, so he slips away.
The underlying logic absolutely demands it. If Jesus dies by random mob violence or, a spur-of-the-moment stoning driven by pure human hatred, the legal burden of that crime falls squarely on humanity.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it would be recorded in the heavenly courts as a standard malicious murder. The people who threw the stones would be entirely guilty of murdering the Son of God.
Which would defeat the entire purpose of his coming. He didn't come to Earth to rack up a cosmic murder charge against the human race.
No, he came to set them free from the charges they already had.
Wow. So he had to actively protect humanity from committing standard murder by ensuring the event unfolded as a fulfilled divine contract.
Precisely. He had to manage the timeline and the method perfectly so that his death qualified as a divine Shokutaku, a commissioned death.
But a commission requires executioners. I mean, someone still has to physically carry out the task.
Right, and the preacher outlines this terrifyingly inevitable domino effect. The chain of command flows from God to Jesus to the high priest Caiaphas to the Roman governor Pilate, and finally down to the soldiers holding the nails.
That chain of command is fascinating, especially when you look at Caiaphas. The historical and political pressure on that guy was suffocating.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just prior to the arrest, Jesus performs his most public, undeniable miracle, raising Lazarus from the dead.
A man who had been dead in a tomb for 4 days literally hears the voice of the divine and walks out.
You cannot keep that quiet.
No. The public response was explosive. When Jesus subsequently rides into Jerusalem, the entire city is in an uproar. And the Pharisees, the religious leaders, are in a state of sheer panic.
And why are they panicking? Because they're looking over their shoulders at Rome.
Exactly. Judea is an occupied territory. The Roman Empire does not tolerate massive, fervent crowds gathering around a charismatic leader who looks like a new king.
Not at all. If Rome smells a rebellion, they won't just arrest Jesus. They will send the legions. They'll burn the temple, slaughter the population, and crush the nation of Israel entirely.
So the religious council is backed into an impossible corner. They are terrified. And in the midst of this chaotic council meeting, Caiaphas, the high priest, stands up and silences the room. He says, "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish."
He's prophesying the exact mechanism of the atonement, probably without even realizing the theological weight of what he's saying.
Right. But the point made in today's sermon is that his role as high priest is what really matters here.
Yes. Caiaphas wasn't just a cunning politician offering a pragmatic solution. As the high priest serving God that specific year, he was receiving the divine commission directly into the religious structure.
He was drafted.
He was. And his subsequent actions show a man desperate to fulfill that commission, whatever the cost.
You really see that desperation during the trial itself. Caiaphas asks Jesus under oath if he is the Son of God. Jesus affirms it, adding that they will see him sitting at the right hand of power.
And what does Caiaphas do? He immediately grabs his own robes and tears them.
Which, under Levitical law, is a staggering detail. The high priest was strictly forbidden from tearing his sacred garments.
Yes, it was an offense punishable by death.
So Caiaphas is so overwhelmed by the necessity of condemning Jesus to save the nation from Rome that he commits a capital offense himself just to declare Jesus guilty of blasphemy and seal the verdict.
Exactly. He accepts the commission with his own life on the line.
But the chain of command doesn't stop at the religious authorities. They don't have the legal right to execute anyone under Roman occupation.
Right, they have to hand the commission off to Pilate, the Roman governor.
And Pilate represents an entirely different kind of reaction to this divine contract, doesn't he? It's like the human conscience trying to reject it.
Totally. Pilate investigates Jesus and repeatedly states, I find no guilt in this man. He tries everything to get out of it.
He tries to pass jurisdiction to Herod.
He tries to appease the crowd by having Jesus flogged. He literally washes his hands in front of the mob, declaring himself innocent of this man's blood.
He is desperately trying to break the chain. He's saying, I refuse the commission. But the political reality, the mob threatening a riot, threatening to tell Caesar that Pilate is protecting a rival king, it creates a storm he just cannot control.
No, he is forced to hand Jesus over to the soldiers.
But that raises a massive theological question. Like, what if Pilate had somehow succeeded in saying no? What happens? What if humanity just refused to lay a hand on Jesus?
Well, listening to today's sermon, we learn that the consequences of refusing a divine commission are cosmic and they are severe.
Wow.
Yeah. To explain why, the preacher pulls in two incredibly intense narratives from the Old Testament. The first is a deeply unsettling story from 1 Kings chapter 20.
Yeah, I was wrestling with this story because it sounds so harsh on the surface. A prophet walks up to his companion and says, "By the word of the Lord, strike me." He is literally commissioning an assault, but the companion refuses. And you have to assume he refuses out of basic human decency. Like, he doesn't want to punch his friend in the face.
Right.
But the prophet tells him that because he refused the voice of the Lord, a lion will kill him as soon as they part ways. And the lion actually strikes the man dead.
It's wild.
Then the prophet finds a second man, issues the exact same commission, strike me, and the second man obeys. He wounds the prophet and walks away completely unharmed.
The harshness of that story perfectly illustrates the mechanism of divine necessity. In the biblical framework, a prophetic act isn't just a metaphor. It is a physical manifestation of God's reality.
Okay.
So if that first man acts on human sentimentality and refuses the commission, he is actively blocking the will of God. Apply that to the cross.
Oh, I see.
If Jesus' executioners acted out of kindness and refused to crucify him, the sacrifice doesn't happen. The atonement fails. Humanity remains eternally separated from God.
So refusing the commission to save humanity is actually an act of cosmic sabotage?
Exactly. Which is why the penalty in the first king story is so severe.
Yeah.
The divine order of salvation cannot be broken by human reluctance.
The pressure of God's will is absolute. And the second Old Testament parallel illustrates that pressure perfectly too. It's the story of Jonah.
Yes. Jonah receives a commission from God to preach repentance to the enemy city of Nineveh. And he actively rebels.
He runs down to the port of Joppa, buys a ticket, and gets on a boat, sailing in the exact opposite direction.
He is the ultimate runaway. He's trying to get off the grid entirely.
But you cannot outrun a divine commission. God sends a storm. And this isn't just a bad weather system. It's a terrifying, supernatural tempest that threatens to rip the ship into splinters.
And Jonah knows immediately that he is the cause of the storm. The divine pressure is entirely focused on him. So he turns to the pagan sailors and says, "Pick me up and throw me into the sea."
Which is, by definition, a commission murder. Jonah is asking them to execute him to appease the storm.
Yes, but the sailors react exactly like Pilate. They don't want to shed innocent blood. Their human conscience kicks in.
Right. They ignore Jonah's commission and try to row their way back to shore. But the harder they row, the worse the storm gets. God's pressure is relentless.
They are forced into a corner where their only option for survival is to accept the commission. They actually pray to God, saying, "Please do not hold us guilty of shedding innocent blood." And then they throw Jonah overboard.
And the second he hits the water, the sea goes dead calm. The sailors are saved precisely because they carried out the commissioned death. And Jonah, mirroring the 3 days Jesus spends in the tomb, survives in the belly of the great fish and eventually completes his mission, leading to the salvation of Nineveh.
The parallels are just flawless. The political upheaval in Jerusalem, the screaming crowds, the threat of Rome, that was the storm.
Wow.
Yeah. Caiaphas, Pilate, and the Roman soldiers were the sailors. They were trapped in a tempest of divine necessity. They didn't want to be guilty of innocent blood, but the storm forced their hands. They executed the divine Shokutaku.
Okay, the theological chain of command makes total sense. We see how the Old Testament precedents prove that God's will cannot be thwarted. But if I'm playing devil's advocate here, why does God need this massive legal loophole?
Right, what's the practical application?
Exactly. Like, if I'm listening to this right now and carrying a lifetime of guilt for my own mistakes, why does this specific Shokutaku maneuver actually change my status today? What is the so what?
So what is the ultimate legal shift in how you are judged? From a strictly human perspective, we look at the cross and see a brutal execution. Humanity murdered the Son of God. But from the perspective of the ultimate judge, God the Father, the legal reality is entirely different.
Because Jesus explicitly stated the terms of the contract.
Exactly. In John chapter 10, he says, "No one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again."
To really make that legal shift click, the preacher brings in a brilliant analogy from Victor Hugo's masterpiece, Les Miserables.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures the essence of the reality spoken in today's sermon.
So you have Jean Valjean, right, an ex-convict who is hardened and desperate. A kind bishop takes him in for the night, feeds him, treats him like a human being. And Valjean repays that grace by waking up in the middle of the night, stealing the bishop's precious silver candlesticks, and fleeing.
He is undeniably guilty of theft. He took property that did not belong to her.
Exactly. And the police catch him. They drag him back to the bishop's house with the stolen silver literally in his hands.
He's caught red-handed.
Caught red-handed. And the penalty is going back to the galleys, which is essentially a life sentence in prison. The police present the evidence to the bishop. But the bishop looks at the police, looks at Valjean, and says, "Wait, he didn't steal these. I gave them to him.
Yeah.
In fact, he forgot the silver plates I gave him as well."
And in that single sentence, the entire legal reality of the situation evaporates.
It's almost like a cosmic chargeback on a credit card, you know? Imagine the prosecutor is standing in court, holding the receipt for the crime, demanding payment, but God the Father just looks at the ledger and says, actually, the account holder pre-authorized this transaction. It was a gift.
Wow, yes.
The moment the owner of the property declares it a gift, no fraud occurred, the theft ceases to exist, the case is thrown out.
Apply that to the crucifixion. Humanity, represented by the religious leaders and the Roman Empire, seemingly commits the ultimate crime. We stole the life of the Son of God. We are caught red-handed, standing before the judge of the universe.
But God the Father looks at the cross, and instead of charging humanity with first-degree murder, he hears the words of Jesus. "They didn't take my life. I gave it to them. I laid it down of my own accord."
Because Jesus submitted to the Shokutaku, the commission, and willingly gave his life, God does not see humanity's sin of murder. He only sees his Son's willing sacrifice. Therefore, the crime is dismissed.
That is beautiful.
Think about what that means for you listening right now. If you're carrying around guilt for past mistakes, feeling like you stole something or broke God's law or ruined your own life, this legal shift completely changes your standing in court.
It is the ultimate loophole of grace. You aren't just forgiven, you are legally cleared. You aren't a convicted felon waiting for parole. The stain of the crime doesn't even remain in the filing cabinet because, according to the judge, no crime occurred. The life was given, not taken.
That absolute profound freedom is exactly what it is spoken in today's sermon. The preacher stresses that God only looks at the faith of the believer. When you simply believe that Jesus laid down his life for you, you step out of the courtroom and into that freedom.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle. We've spent this whole time analyzing the commission, the heavy, legal, terrifying Shokutaku of the cross. But we have to return to the first word we discussed. The other, Shokutaku the table.
The merging of these two identical-sounding words is easily the most beautiful part of the message.
It really is, because it happens on the night before he dies at the Last Supper. Jesus sits down at the physical Shokutaku, the dining table, with his disciples. And what does he do? He breaks the bread, he passes the cup, and he issues his final Shokutaku, his final commission to us.
To take and eat?
Exactly, take and eat.
He is commissioning us to partake in the benefits of his sacrifice. And listening to today's sermon, it becomes incredibly clear that faith is the only requirement to accept that invitation.
Yeah.
The preacher points to the story of the Roman centurion. This was a man completely outside the religious system, a soldier of the occupying army. He simply asked Jesus for a word to heal his servant, openly stating he wasn't worthy to have Jesus step foot in his house.
And Jesus marveled at that raw faith.
He did. He declared that many will come from the east and the west to take their places at the feast, at the eternal table, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven.
By accepting the heavy commission, by believing that Jesus freely gave his life to erase your sentence, you are guaranteed a seat at that eternal dining table. The Shokutaku of the cross definitively buys your seat at the Shokutaku of heaven.
That reality should fundamentally transform how we operate on a daily basis. The preacher's plea at the conclusion of his message is remarkably earnest. He asks that we stop agonizing over the problem of our own sin. It has been definitively legally dealt with. It has been buried by the commission of Christ.
It is an unbelievable shift in perspective, isn't it? We spend so much of our daily lives feeling anxious, feeling guilty. We hold on to the things we've stolen, the mistakes we've made, the ways we've fallen short of expectations.
Yeah, we walk around waiting for the cosmic police to knock on the door and drag us back to the galleys.
But what if the creator of the universe looks at your deepest flaws, your most profound guilt, and says, no, I have already covered the cost. It wasn't taken. It was a gift.
If you truly believe that the judge has torn up your file, how does that change the way you walk through your life tomorrow?
If the sentence is gone, how completely free are you willing to be? That is the thought we want to leave at the table for you today. Keep listening, keep exploring, and we'll see you at the next deep dive.